I'd been driving that stretch of Highway 47 every weekday for 8 years, ever since I took the job at the mill in Willow Creek. It was a nothing special road, the kind that snakes through the pine forests of upstate New York with mile markers that blurred together after a while. You know the type: potholes patched too many times, faded billboards advertising long-gone diners, and the occasional deer crossing sign that you stop noticing. But that Tuesday morning, as the sun crested the hills and painted the asphalt in that pale winter light, something shifted. The road didn't change, not really. It was me who felt off, like I'd taken a wrong turn into a version of my own life I didn't recognize. And it started with the sign. The Welcome to Willow Creek sign had always been there, rusted at the edges, leaning a little to the left from years of wind. But as I crested the hill, about 5 miles out from town, I saw it differently. The letters seemed sharper, almost freshly painted, and there was no rust, no lean. It stood straight like it had been replaced overnight. I slowed the truck to a crawl, my wipers batting away the light mist that clung to the windshield. Had they finally fixed it? The county was always talking about sprucing up the outskirts, but nothing ever happened. I shook it off, chalked it up to the fog playing tricks, and pressed the accelerator. Work was waiting, and I had a shift starting at 7. My name's Ethan Hale, 34, born and raised in the shadow of these woods. Willow Creek isn't much. A cluster of clapboard houses, a single stoplight downtown, and the mill that's kept the town afloat since my granddad's day. I live in a 2-bedroom rancher on Elm Street, the kind of place with a chain-link fence and a driveway that's more gravel than concrete. It's quiet, the way small towns are, with neighbors who wave from their porches and kids riding bikes until dusk. My routine was as predictable as the seasons. Up at 5:30, black coffee in a thermos, drive the 20 minutes to the mill, punch in, run the lathe until the whistle blew at 3. Evenings were for fixing up the old Ford in the garage or grabbing a burger at Sally's Diner. No wife, no kids, just me and the dog Max, who greets me at the door like I'm the highlight of his day. That morning felt no different at first. I'd woken to the alarm's buzz, the house still dark and chilly. Max padded after me to the kitchen, his nails clicking on the linoleum, while I poured coffee and stared out the window at the frost-laced lawn. The radio hummed low in the background, some local station playing classic rock between weather updates, another cold snap rolling in from the lake. I scratched Max behind the ears, grabbed my lunch pail, and headed out. The truck started on the first try, a small victory on a day that already felt heavier than usual. As I backed out, the neighborhood was stirring, Mrs. Harlan watering her poinsettias despite the freeze, the paperboy on his route. Normal, steady. The drive usually cleared my head, that monotony of the road letting the worries of the week fade. But today, as I merged onto 47, the unease lingered from that sign. I glanced in the rear view, half expecting to see the old version still there, but the curve hid it already. Maybe it was the light, I thought, or the way the mist hung low, turning familiar landmarks into ghosts. The pines whipped by, their branches heavy with snow, and I kept an eye on the odometer. 10 miles in, the gas station came up, the Exxon with the flickering neon that I'd stopped at 100 times. But the sign was wrong again. The E in Exxon was crooked, like it had been bent in a storm, but I swear it had been straight last week. I pulled in anyway, needing a fill-up before the shift. The pump clicked on, and I stood there, hands in my jacket pockets, watching the numbers roll. The attendant, old Mr. Grady, was inside, flipping through a magazine behind the counter. He'd been there forever, same flannel shirt, same gravelly voice, asking if I wanted a receipt. But when I went in to pay, he looked up with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Morning, Ethan, usual?" he said, ringing me up. I nodded, but something about his tone felt rehearsed, like a line from a play I'd seen too many times. As I turned to leave, I caught a glimpse of the calendar on the wall. December 12th. That was right, wasn't it? The days had blurred lately with the holidays creeping up. Back on the road, the mill loomed ahead, its smokestacks cutting the sky like fingers. I parked in my spot, the one near the chain-link fence, and grabbed my gear. The lot was half full, guys milling about with their thermoses, chatting about the game or the latest layoff rumors. Tim from accounting waved me over. "Hey, Hale, you catch that storm warning? Supposed to dump 6 inches tonight." I forced a laugh, said something about stocking up on salt, but my mind was elsewhere. As I walked toward the entrance, I noticed the flagpole. The company banner usually hung limp, faded from the weather. Today, it snapped crisp in the breeze, colors vivid, like it had been ironed. Another fix-up. The place was falling apart, not getting a facelift. Inside, the hum of machines greeted me, that metallic tang in the air that never quite left your clothes. I clocked in, slipped on my gloves, and settled at the lathe. The work was mindless, wood spinning under the blade, shavings curling to the floor. But every few minutes, my eyes drifted to the window, out to the road beyond. Highway 47 stretched empty, waiting. By lunch, the doubt had settled in my gut like bad coffee. I stepped out for a smoke, old habit I couldn't shake, and scanned the horizon. The pines looked taller, their shadows longer, even though the sun hadn't moved much. And there, in the distance, the curve where the welcome sign should be. I squinted, but the mist swallowed it whole. The afternoon dragged, the rhythm of the mill pulling me through. But as the whistle blew at 3, I felt it, a prickle at the back of my neck, like eyes on me from the trees. I waved goodbye to Tim, climbed into the truck, and started the drive home. The road unfolded the same as always, but now each mile felt measured, deliberate. The billboards were there, but the words seemed rearranged, ads for places I didn't remember. And when I passed the old oak that marked the halfway point, its branches twisted just a bit more than before, reaching like they knew something I didn't. Pulling into my driveway, Max barked from inside, the sound muffled through the door. I sat there a moment, engine idling, staring at the house. The porch light was on, though I'd turned it off that morning. Forgot, probably. Or maybe not. Shutting off the truck, I grabbed my keys and stepped out into the gathering dusk. The neighborhood was quiet, lights flickering on in windows, but the air carried a whisper of something unspoken. Tomorrow, I'd drive it again. The road, my road. But part of me wondered if it would remember me the same way. The next morning came too soon, the alarm slicing through the quiet like a reminder I didn't want. I lay there for a minute, staring at the ceiling fan that hadn't spun since summer, its blades gathering dust in the dim light filtering through the blinds. Max was already up, whining softly from the hallway, his routine more reliable than mine. I swung my legs over the side of the bed, feet hitting the cool hardwood, and rubbed the sleep from my eyes. The house felt heavier overnight, the walls pressing in just a touch, or maybe that was the chill seeping through the drafts. I flicked on the kitchen light, brewed the coffee strong, and watched the steam rise while the radio murmured about road conditions. Nothing unusual, just the usual warnings for black ice on the back roads. By 6, I was in the truck, thermos in hand, backing out onto Elm Street. The neighborhood stirred lazily, porch lights winking off one by one, a distant lawnmower humming despite the cold. Old Mr. Jenkins, probably, tending his yard like it was July. I merged onto Highway 47, the engine's rumble a familiar comfort, but my grip on the wheel tightened as the pines closed in. Last night's unease hadn't faded. If anything, it had rooted deeper, like a splinter I couldn't quite reach. The road looked the same at first glance, same faded lines, same scatter of gravel. But I scanned for differences, eyes darting to the shoulders where the snow had melted into muddy patches. About 3 miles in, the first curve approached, the one that dipped low before climbing toward the welcome sign. I slowed without thinking, heart picking up a notch. There it was, the sign, straight and rust-free, letters gleaming under the weak sun. No change from yesterday, but that only made it worse. It shouldn't be this pristine, not after a decade of neglect. I told myself it was the county finally getting to it, some budget windfall I hadn't heard about. But as I accelerated past, a flicker in the rear view caught me, the way the sign seemed to recede too slowly, like the distance was stretching. I blinked hard, refocused on the road ahead. Just the angle, I reasoned. The mist from yesterday had cleared, leaving the air sharp and still. The Exxon came up quicker than expected, or maybe I was driving faster to shake the feeling. I pulled in, the gravel crunching under the tires, and killed the engine. Mr. Grady was outside this time, wiping down the pumps with a rag that looked older than he was. He nodded as I approached, his face creased in that perpetual squint from years under the fluorescence. "Ethan, fuel up?" His voice carried the same gravelly drawl, but there was a pause before he spoke, like he was reading from a script in his head. I muttered a yes, swiped my card at the pump, and watched the numbers climb. While the gas flowed, I glanced at the store window, catching my reflection. Tired eyes, stubble shadowing my jaw. Behind me, the highway stretched empty, no cars in sight, which wasn't unusual this early but felt pointed today. Inside, the bell jingled as I pushed the door open, the warmth hitting me like a wall. The place smelled of stale coffee and motor oil, shelves stocked with the basics. Chips, sodas, those little air fresheners shaped like trees. Grady was back at the counter tallying receipts. "Receipt?" he asked, not looking up. I shook my head, but as I turned to leave, my eyes snagged on the calendar again. December 12th. The page flipped but unchanged. Wait, no, yesterday it was the same date. Had I imagined that? The days were blending, work and home folding into one long loop. I paused at the door, hand on the frame. "Grady, they fixed that sign out there yet? The welcome one?" He glanced up, brow furrowing just a fraction. "Sign? Been the same as always? Far as I know." His tone was flat, dismissive, but his eyes lingered a beat too long before dropping back to his ledger. Back on the road, the mill's smokestacks appeared sooner than they should have, piercing the tree line like they'd shifted closer overnight. I checked the odometer, 18 miles right on schedule, but the landscape felt compressed, the turns coming too fast. The flagpole came into view as I neared the lot, the banner still snapping vividly, mocking the faded paint on the building itself. I parked, grabbed my gear, and headed in, the cold air nipping at my heels. Inside, the crew was the same. Tim nursing his coffee by the time clock, a couple of guys from maintenance jawing about the union dues. "Hale, you look like hell," Tim said with a grin, clapping my shoulder. "Rough night?" I shrugged it off, clocked in, and made for the lathe. "Just the drive," I replied, but the words hung there, heavier than intended. The morning blurred into the familiar grind, wood feeding into the machine, the steady whine drowning out thought. But concentration slipped. Every shadow in the corner of my eye pulled me back to the road. By 10, I needed air. I stepped out to the loading dock, lit a smoke, and leaned against the railing. The highway unspooled below, a grey ribbon cutting through the pines. No traffic, just the wind rustling the branches, carrying a faint, rhythmic creak, like distant tires on asphalt, though nothing moved. I exhaled slowly, watching the smoke curl and dissipate. That's when I noticed the mile marker. The one just beyond the fence, 4712 it read. But last week it had been 4711. Had I miscounted the miles, or was the road shortening? Lunch came, and I ate alone in the break room, picking at a sandwich from home. The TV flickered in the corner, some news segment about a missing hiker up in the Adirondacks, but the words washed over me. My mind kept circling back, the sign, the calendar. The way Grady's smile didn't fit. Isolation crept in, not from the others. They were right there laughing over a deck of cards, but from the growing certainty that something in my world was unraveling, thread by thread. I wasn't imagining it. The details were piling up, subtle but insistent, like whispers in an empty room. The afternoon shift dragged, the lathe's rhythm, now a pulse matching my unease. As 3 o'clock neared, I caught myself glancing at the clock every few minutes, willing it forward. When the whistle finally blew, relief mixed with dread. I signed out, nodded to Tim, and headed for the truck. The lot felt emptier than usual, echoes of footsteps fading too quickly. Starting the engine, I pulled onto 47. The road welcoming me back with its deceptive calm. But halfway home, the old oak loomed, branches twisting in the wind. Or was it my imagination? They seemed to lean inward, framing the path like a question. Turning onto Elm Street, the house came into view, porch light off this time, the way I'd left it. Max greeted me at the door, tail thumping. But as I stepped inside, the quiet pressed heavier. I locked the door, poured a drink, and sank into the armchair by the window. Outside, dusk settled early, the streetlights buzzing to life. Tomorrow's drive loomed in my mind, the road waiting, patient and unchanging. Or was it? Sleep would come fitfully, I knew, haunted by the stretch of asphalt that suddenly felt like it had eyes. The third morning hit like a replay, the alarm pulling me from a sleep, fractured by half-remembered dreams of endless curves and signs that shifted when I wasn't looking. I lay still for a moment, the bedroom clock's red glow casting a faint pulse on the walls, each tick echoing too loudly in the silence. Max's paws scratched lightly at the door, a gentle insistence that grounded me. I pushed back the covers, the air cool against my skin, and padded to the bathroom. The mirror showed the same face, lines etched deeper around my eyes, a shadow of fatigue that coffee wouldn't chase away. Brushing my teeth, I stared at my reflection, searching for something off. But it was just me, worn from another night of tossing. Downstairs, the kitchen routine unfolded on autopilot, coffee brewing with its familiar gurgle, the thermos filling with steam that fogged the window over the sink. Outside, Elm Street lay hushed under a thin frost. The neighbors' houses buttoned up against the cold. No movement except for a squirrel darting across the lawn. The radio crackled to life. Same station, same DJ with his easy banter about the forecast. Clear skies, but watch for fog in the valleys. I scratched Max's head, his warm breath a small comfort, and grabbed my keys. "Be good," I murmured, locking up behind me. The truck door creaked open, engine turning over with a reluctant rumble, and I eased onto the road, the neighborhood fading in the rear view like it always did. Highway 47 welcomed me with its deceptive straightness. The pines standing sentinel on either side, their needles whispering in the breeze. But my hands gripped the wheel tighter from the start, knuckles paling as I scanned the shoulders for any shift in the familiar. The first mile passed without incident, the odometer clicking forward steadily, but the quiet felt thicker, like the world was holding its breath. Then the curve approached, the one leading to the welcome sign. I braced myself, slowing as the hill crested. There it stood, pristine as before, letters bold against the weathered post. No rust, no tilt. But today, as I drew level, a new detail snagged my attention. The town's name, Willow Creek, seemed etched a shade deeper, the spacing between the letters just a hair wider, like a subtle emphasis on the word creek. I blinked, accelerating past, but the image lingered, pulling at the edges of my certainty. The Exxon loomed sooner again, or perhaps the road was folding in on itself, distances compressing without reason. I pulled in, the pump's familiar beep grounding me as I swiped the card. Grady was inside, visible through the glass, his silhouette hunched over the counter. No need for gas today, I'd topped off yesterday. but habit drew me toward the door anyway, a vague urge to confirm something, anything. The bell tinkled as I entered, the air inside carrying that same mix of oil and instant noodles. Grady looked up, his eyes meeting mine with a steadiness that felt probing. "Ethan, early today." Not a question, just a statement, his voice flat as the counter between us. "Yeah," I replied, grabbing a pack of gum from the rack to have a reason to be there. "That sign out front, the welcome one. You notice anything different about it?" He paused, fingers drumming once on the ledger, a rhythm I'd never heard from him before. "Different how?" His gaze didn't waver, but there was a flicker, like he was weighing his words. I shrugged, paying for the gum. "Just looks. New. Cleaner." He nodded slowly, ringing me up. "Roads get fixed up sometimes, county stuff." But as I turned to leave, he added, almost too casually, "You drive this stretch every day, don't you? Must know it like your own backyard." The words hung there, innocent enough, but they twisted in my gut, echoing the isolation I'd felt building. Did he mean it that way? Or was I reading too much into the small talk? Back on the highway, the engine's hum did little to drown out the questions circling my mind. The mill appeared abruptly, the smokestacks closer still, as if the entire landscape had inched forward overnight. I parked in my spot, the gravel quieter under the tires, and headed inside. The time clock beeped as I punched in, the crew's voices a low murmur in the background. Tim by the lockers, sorting his tools, a couple others debating the coffee's strength. "Morning, Hale," Tim called, but his wave felt distant, like he was moving through water. I nodded, slipping on my gloves, the lathe's cold metal a brief anchor as I started the machine. Wood fed in, shavings spiraling down, but focus fractured every few turns. My eyes kept drifting to the window, to the ribbon of 47 snaking away, empty and watchful. By mid-morning, the unease had sharpened into something sharper, a persistent itch under my skin. I stepped out for a break, the loading dock's chill air slapping my face. Lighting up, I inhaled deeply, exhaling toward the tree line. The wind picked up, carrying that creak again, faint, rhythmic, like tires rolling slow on distant pavement. Nothing moved on the road, but the sound persisted, syncing with my pulse. I scanned the mile marker beyond the fence, 4712, unchanged, but now it seemed off-center, the number leaning slightly, as if the post had settled unevenly. Shaking my head, I crushed the cigarette under my boot and went back in. But the creak followed in my mind, a whisper that the road wasn't done with me yet. Lunch in the break room offered no respite. The guys clustered around the table, cards slapping down, laughter cutting through the hum of the fridge. I sat apart, unwrapping my sandwich, but their words blurred into noise. Tim glanced over once, brow raised. "You okay, man? Quiet today." I forced a smile. "Just tired. Long week." He nodded, turning back to the game, but the exchange left me adrift, the room feeling larger, the walls farther away. Were they noticing the same shifts? Or was it only me, trapped in a version of this place that no one else saw? The TV droned on, a commercial for some chain motel upstate, its facade gleaming unnaturally bright, reminding me of the sign, the banner, all these things polished to an edge that cut. The afternoon crawled, each hour stretching the tension taut. At the lathe, my hands moved on instinct, but thoughts looped. The calendar stuck on the 12th, Grady's lingering look, the creak that echoed without source. Isolation deepened, not from solitude. The mill buzzed around me, but from the growing divide between what I knew and what stared back. As the whistle pierced the air at 3, I signed out quickly, avoiding Tim's goodbye. Outside, the lot emptied fast, trucks rumbling away, leaving echoes that faded into the pines. I slid into mine, the key turning with a click that felt final. The drive home unfolded in reverse, the road pulling me back with a gravity all its own. The old oak passed, branches arching higher, their shadows stretching long in the fading light. Halfway, a deer stood at the edge of the woods, eyes fixed on the truck. Not startled, not fleeing, just watching as I drove by. My heart stuttered, but it vanished into the trees without a sound. Elm Street appeared, the house dark and waiting, porch light off. Max's bark greeted me as I pulled in, a normalcy that rang hollow now. Inside, I locked the door, the click echoing through the quiet rooms. Pouring a drink, I settled by the window, glass in hand, staring out at the street where lamps flickered on one by one. The road had let me go for now, but tomorrow it would call again, and I wondered what new face it would wear, what piece of my world it would reshape next. Sleep, when it came, would be shallow, the creak of tires haunting the edges of my dreams. The fourth morning arrived shrouded in a fog that seeped through the cracks of the house, turning the world outside my window into a muted watercolor. I woke before the alarm, the sheets tangled around me from another night of restless turning, dreams dissolving into fragments of asphalt and whispering pines. The clock read 4:47, its digits glowing like embers in the dark bedroom. Max stirred at the foot of the bed, his ears perking as if he'd sensed my unease before I did. I sat up slowly, the floorboards creaking under my weight, and rubbed my temples. The air felt stale, trapped, as though the house had drawn a tighter breath overnight. Downstairs, I flicked on the kitchen light, its bulb humming faintly, and started the coffee. The pot gurgled louder than usual, or maybe it was just the silence amplifying everything. The drip, the dog's soft panting, the distant hum of a truck on Elm Street that shouldn't have been out this early. By 5:30, I was dressed and thermos in hand, the neighborhood still cloaked in pre-dawn grey. Frost etched patterns on the windshield as I scraped it clean, the metal tool biting into the ice with a sound that set my teeth on edge. The truck's engine caught after 2 tries, a hesitation that mirrored my own, and I pulled away, the headlights carving tunnels through the fog. Elm Street blurred past. Houses with curtains drawn, no lights, no signs of life. But as I reached the intersection with 47, a figure caught my eye on the corner. A man in a dark coat, standing motionless under the street lamp, face turned toward me. No dog, no newspaper, just standing there, half lost in the mist. I blinked, and he was gone, swallowed by the haze, leaving only the echo of my pulse in my ears. Highway 47 unfolded like a memory I couldn't trust, the fog clinging low to the road, muting the pines to shadowy sentinels. My wipers swept rhythmically, but they did little to clear the veil in my mind. The first mile felt elongated, the odometer crawling forward while the landscape lagged behind, as if the world was reluctant to keep pace. Then the curve rose, and with it, the welcome sign emerged from the mist. Pristine still, but now the post seemed taller, the base sunk deeper into the earth, anchoring it with an unnatural permanence. I slowed to a near stop, engine idling, staring at the letters. Willow Creek. The spacing was wider again, the C in creek curving slightly, like a hook pulling at something inside me. Had it always been that way? Or was it adapting, reshaping to match my growing doubt? I pressed the gas, the truck lurching forward, but the sign lingered in the rear view, unmoving, watchful. The Exxon appeared abruptly, materializing from the fog like a mirage, closer than yesterday. 15 miles total, not the 20 I'd clocked before. I didn't need gas, but the pull was there, and compulsion to check, to ground myself in the routine. Tires crunching on gravel, I parked and stepped out, the cold air sharp against my skin. Grady was at the window, wiping it with that same rag, his movements deliberate, almost mechanical. Through the glass, our eyes met, and he nodded once, slow and measured. Inside, the bell's jingle felt hollow, the warmth no longer comforting but confining. The shelves looked the same, candy bars aligned, coolers humming, but the calendar on the wall snared me. December 12th, the date unchanged. The page edges crisp as if freshly turned yet frozen in place. 4 days now, looping without advance. "Grady," I said, approaching the counter, my voice steadier than I felt. He turned, his squint deepening. "Ethan, fog's thick out there." No question about the time, just the observation hanging between us. I leaned on the counter, glancing at the ledger open before him, neat columns of numbers, but the entries blurred when I tried to read them. That calendar. It's been the 12th all week. He paused, pen hovering, then flipped the page with a deliberate motion. December 13th, stared back, bold and new. "Must have missed it," he muttered, but his eyes didn't leave mine, holding a fraction too long, as if measuring my reaction. "You see things sometimes in this weather, tricks of the light." The words were casual, but they landed like stones in still water, rippling through me. Was he dismissing me or warning? I bought nothing, just nodded and left, the door swinging shut behind me with a finality that echoed in my chest. The road to the mill shortened further, the turns whipping by in a disorienting blur, the fog lifting just enough to reveal the smokestacks piercing the sky too soon. Parking, I sat a moment, hands on the wheel, breathing deep. The lot was sparse, a few trucks dotted like islands, but the air carried that creak again, faint, insistent, as if the highway itself was flexing, alive beneath the surface. Inside, the mill's hum enveloped me, but it felt off-key, the machine's rhythm syncing with the sound in my head. Tim was at his station, tools clattering, and he glanced up as I clocked in. "Hale, you hear that? Like tires out back." I froze, then forced a shrug. Fog plays with sounds. He laughed it off, but his eyes searched mine, a flicker of something unspoken passing between us. Or was it my imagination, projecting the isolation onto every face? At the lathe, the work demanded focus, but it slipped away like sand. Wood spun, shavings fell, yet my mind circled the anomalies, the signs evolving letters, the calendar's stall, Grady's probing gaze. Every glance out the window showed 47 empty, but the creak persisted, growing rhythmic like footsteps pacing just beyond sight. By 10, sweat beaded on my forehead despite the chill, and I stepped out to the dock, lighting a smoke with shaking hands. The fog had thinned, revealing the mile marker, 47 to 12, but now the 1 in 12 leaned further, almost a 7, distorting the number into something ambiguous. The creek swelled closer, as if originating from the fence itself, and I scanned the tree line. Shadows shifted, branches swaying without wind, forming shapes that suggested eyes, outlines of figures half-formed in the underbrush. No one there, of course, but the sensation of being observed prickled my skin, a weight pressing from all sides, the road, the woods, even the mill behind me. Lunch passed in a haze, the break room's chatter a distant murmur. I ate mechanically, avoiding the others, my thoughts tunneling inward. Tim tried once more. "You sure you're all right? Look like you've seen a ghost." I met his gaze, searching for alliance, but his concern felt scripted, part of the loop. "Just the drive," I said, the lie tasting bitter. The TV flickered, a report on fog-related delays upstate, motels filling with stranded drivers. But the motel sign in the ad gleamed too perfectly, echoing the welcome post. Isolation wrapped tighter, not physical but profound. This world bending around me, repeating, watching, while I alone noticed the seams fraying. The afternoon inched by, the lathe's whine now a counterpoint to the creak that followed me inside, echoing in the vents. Doubt gnawed deeper. Was I unraveling, or was the road revealing its true nature, a patient entity reshaping my reality, one subtle shift at a time. As 3 o'clock struck, I bolted, signing out without a word. The lot cleared fast, my truck the last to rumble onto 47. The drive home stretched, the oak's branches now arching overhead like a canopy, enclosing the path. No deer this time, but the creek accompanied me, fading only as Elm Street neared. The house stood dark, Max's silhouette in the window a lone anchor. Inside, the lock clicked, the quiet amplifying my breaths. Pouring a drink, I collapsed into the chair, staring into the night where streetlights hummed. Tomorrow's dawn loomed, the road waiting to pull me back, its changes no longer deniable, whispering that I was no longer driving it, it was driving me. The fifth morning broke with a clarity that felt wrong. The fog from yesterday burned off by a sun that rose too sharp, too insistent, slicing through the blinds, like it was trying to expose every hidden corner of the room. I hadn't slept more than an hour straight. The creak from my dreams, bleeding into the quiet hours, a tireless rhythm that mocked the stillness of the house. Max lay curled at the bedroom door, his breathing steady, but when I stirred, he lifted his head, eyes reflecting the dawn light with a wariness that mirrored my own. The clock blinked 4:52, earlier than before, as if time itself was accelerating to catch up with whatever was unraveling. I swung my legs out, the floor cold and unyielding, and made my way downstairs, each step echoing in the empty spaces. In the kitchen, the coffee pot waited like an old friend, but as I filled it, my hand paused. The machine's cord, always coiled neatly by the outlet, lay stretched across the counter, unplugged. Had I done that last night? In the haze of exhaustion, maybe, but the details nagged, piling onto the stack of anomalies that now towered in my mind. The brew hissed to life, steam curling upward, and I stared out the window at Elm Street. The frost had melted unevenly, leaving patches that gleamed like eyes in the grass. No early trucks today, no squirrels, just the neighborhood holding its breath. Houses squat and silent under the pale sky. The radio stayed off. I couldn't bear the DJ's voice. That false normalcy droning about clear roads ahead. By 5:15, I was in the truck, the engine turning over smoother than yesterday, almost eager. The headlights flicked off as I reached the intersection, unnecessary in the growing light. But the shadows in the pines seemed to cling longer, retreating only as I accelerated onto Highway 47. The road greeted me with a smoothness I'd never noticed. The asphalt unmarred by the usual cracks, the lines crisp and white, as if repaved in the night. My grip tightened, the wheel familiar yet foreign under my palms, and I drove slower, eyes tracing every inch for the next shift. The pines stood taller, their tops brushing the sky, enclosing the path in a tighter embrace. But the real pull came from the quiet, a silence so profound it hummed, broken only by the faint creak that started up again, low and persistent, like the road settling under my tires. The curve to the welcome sign arrived too quickly, the hill cresting before I'd braced myself. There it was, taller now, the post rising like it had grown roots that pushed it upward. The letters Willow Creek stretched wide, the W curving into a shape that suggested a mouth, open and waiting. I slammed on the brakes, the truck skidding to a halt just shy of it, gravel spraying. Heart pounding, I stepped out, the door creaking shut behind me, and approached on foot. Up close, the paint was flawless, no brush strokes, no weathering, just an unnatural gloss that reflected my face back at me, distorted slightly, my eyes hollower than I remembered. Touching the metal, it was warm, not cold from the morning air, vibrating faintly with that same creak I'd heard for days. Willow Creek, my town, my life. But as I traced the letters, a chill settled deeper. The sign wasn't welcoming arrivals. It was marking something else, a boundary I'd crossed without knowing, or one that had crossed me. Back in the truck, I drove on, the Exxon materializing even closer, barely 10 miles from the sign now, the landscape folding in like paper. I didn't stop this time. Grady's face in the window was enough, his silhouette frozen in place, watching as I passed. The mill loomed next, smokestacks scraping the clouds. The building itself expanded somehow, windows multiplied along the facade, reflecting the road back at itself. Parking felt like surrender, the engines cut off, leaving only the creak, louder here, emanating from the fence, the ground everywhere. Inside, the hum of machines assaulted me, but the crew was sparse. Tim absent, the others moving like shadows. Their conversations muted, gestures slowed. I clocked in, the beep echoing unnaturally, and approached the lathe, but my hands trembled on the controls. The wood wouldn't feed right. It jammed, then spun too fast, shavings flying in patterns that suggested writing, words I couldn't read. By 10, the isolation cracked open. I fled to the dock. The air outside thick with the scent of pine and something metallic, like ozone before a storm. The creek swelled into a chorus, tires on asphalt from all directions, circling without source. Leaning on the railing, I scanned the highway, empty. But the mile marker twisted now, 47 to 12, morphing into 47:21, then back, flickering like a bad signal. That's when it hit. Not a thunderclap, but a quiet unraveling, the pieces slotting into place with a sickening clarity. The road hadn't changed. I had. Or rather, the version of me driving it every day, looping the same miles, the same routines, had worn thin. And this stretch of 47 was peeling back the layers, revealing the stagnation I'd ignored for years. Willow Creek wasn't a town anymore. It was a cage. The signs and calendars and creeks all echoes of my own repetition, the world reshaping to mirror the trap I'd built. No escape in work, no solace in home. The drive was the truth, endless and watchful, because I'd never truly left it behind. The realization settled like fog in my chest, emotional weight without release, a profound loneliness that the pines seemed to lean into, acknowledging. The whistle blew early, or maybe time had bent again, and I stumbled to the truck, the lot deserted, no goodbyes. The drive home reversed the pull, the road stretching out now, infinite, the oak's branches weaving a net overhead. Elm Street appeared, but the house looked smaller, windows dark, Max's bark absent from within. I parked, engine ticking down, and sat there as dusk fell prematurely. The streetlights buzzing to life one by one. Stepping out, the porch light flickered on without my touch, casting long shadows that danced like invitations. Inside, the quiet was absolute. No dog, no warmth, just the creak, faint now, from the walls themselves. I poured a drink with hands that didn't shake anymore, sinking into the chair by the window. Outside, Highway 47 waited in the distance, a grey vein pulsing under the stars. Tomorrow I'd drive it again, but now I knew it would always appear different because I was the one who kept changing, trapped in the motion that led nowhere. The glass touched my lips, the burn familiar, and in the silence, the road whispered my name.